Hello again and welcome to the Unisky training platform. Do well to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos. Today we will be looking at how to create or design a DHCP server or a DHCP router that distributes dynamic IP addresses to computers on the network. The reason for a DHCP server is that it will allow for you to distribute IP addresses dynamically to hundreds or thousands of computers on your network, such that you wouldn't have to go from one computer to the other assigning manual IP addresses to them if need arises. So given the topology on our screen right now, all these computers have no IP address. So we can test that by going to the settings of the computer. We realize that there isn't an IP address and it's set to DHCP. We could also go to the command and then we try ipconfig. So we realize that everything is set to 0.0.0.0. There isn't any IP address, gateway, or a DNS on our system. So to enable our DHCP server, we need to configure our router to do that particular service. So we first of all log onto our router. And now always remember to switch to the system view of the router from the global mode. So once we are in the system view, I advise that you adopt the culture of renaming your router. So sysname, we rename it to maybe router DHCP. So our router is a DHCP router. Now all we need to do is one, enable the DHCP service. But again, you would realize that this is the interface that transmits the IP address. Now that particular interface cannot be on a dynamic service. It has to be a static IP address. That one has to accept a static IP address because it is not going to respond from any other server. It's rather going to distribute to other computers. So we first of all set an IP address to it by navigating to the interface. So we say interface 0/0/0, and then we set the IP address on it. We would want to use this set of IP address 172.16.16.1 in that order. So this is the set or the pool of IP address we would want to have by the end of this particular configuration. So we assign 172.16.16.1 to our system, and then we added a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, and now our interface is set. So we can display IP interface brief. So we say display IP interface brief to see the settings of our router right now. So we realize that 172.16.16.1 is assigned to port 0/0/0. Now we would want to then enable the DHCP service on this particular router. So how do we do that? We go back to the normal view of the router and then we say DHCP enable. So once we issue this command, we have succeeded in enabling the DHCP service on the router. So we realize there is a configuration or a confirmation here telling us that our DHCP service is up and running. Now that the DHCP service is up and running, we need to select the interface that we would use in doing the distribution, where we would have to create the pool on. So what we do is we select the interface, which will be our gigabit interface 0/0/0, and then we now select DHCP global on that particular interface. So we say DHCP select global. So this means this particular interface is going to be seen as a global interface for our entire network. So every computer on the network would be responding to the global interface because that is where the IP address would come from. So once it sees it as a global interface, it means it is ready to be configured as a DHCP interface. So now we set up a pool. So we say IP pool on that particular interface, Maybe we name our IP pool, say LAN 1. Now that we have successfully created an IP pool and then we named it LAN 1, you'd realize that our system has automatically navigated to the IP pool LAN 1. We were on the interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0/0, but now it has navigated to the IP pool LAN 1, allowing for us to create our network on this particular pool. So we then say the network is, remember I typed an IP address here, so our broadcast IP would be 172.16.16.0. That is our network. Then we define the subnet mask and then we define the gateway. So we say the network would be 172.16.16.0 and then the mask. So we indicate the mask. Remember, if you don't know or if you doubt the command that follows, it is best you use the question mark as usual. So you see that after using the question mark, the clue it gives us is what? The mask. So we enter the mask after one space, and then our subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. Now this sums it up for our network and then the subnet mask for the pool. Then now we define the gateway. So it would be using this particular interface as the gateway, and the IP address for this particular interface is 172.16.16.1. So that is the interface will be given as the gateway. Point being that there could be another interface connected to this router, which is probably responding to the ISP, where the service would be coming from before this interface would do its distribution. So that is why we need to specify which interface does our what? Gateway. And the gateway is simply that part, the channel, the access to our network beyond the geographical interface we have or beyond our scope. So for instance, if you are in a network of say your department or your school and you would want to step out of that network to another network, maybe if you are requesting Yahoo from your network, what your computer does is it passes through the gateway, accesses Yahoo through your server, brings it to the router and then gives it back to your computer. So the gateway serves as that particular portal. It serves as the path, the mediator between your computer and the outside world. Now, do not confuse yourself with the DNS and the gateway. We will get to that along the line. So we specify the gateway by saying gateway, which is 172.16.16.1. So once we do this, our gateway is accepted. Then we would also need the DNS. Now, the gateway only allows you to pass through it to the outside world. But what actually gives you access to the outside world or to the wide area network, which is the one, is your DNS, that is the dynamic name service. This is the service that resolves host names into IP addresses and IP addresses into host names. So it is always prudent to have a DNS service on your router before you can be able to access global servers such as root servers like Google, Yahoo, MSN, or practically the internet. Basically, we term that the internet, but that is typically the wide area network. There are lots of services beyond the internet, but given our scope, we are going to limit ourselves to that. So we define the DNS, maybe default 8.8.8. If you would be entering multiple DNSs, what we do is we differentiate them by a space. So space, another DNS, maybe 4.2.2.2. So once I do this, I expect my DHCP server to be up and running because I enabled it in the beginning. Now you could also exclude some IP addresses in your DHCP pool. So for instance, if I display this, I realize that my gateway list is 172.16.16.1, my network is 172.16.16.0, and then the mask is 255.255.255. Then there is the DNS. Now I could also exclude some IP addresses, and the reason for excluding some IP addresses on the network is that most servers on our network is required that we assign static IP addresses to them. I could have an application server, a database server, I could have a mail server, a web server, and so so on and so forth on my network. These servers are supposed to be assigned static IP addresses such that their IPs would not be mistaken for another computer on the network. Otherwise, there would be what we call an IP address conflict. So now that we think our DHCP is up and running, let us give it a try by running here and going to the command. Let me say IP config. So once we issue the IP config, previously we came here and it was 00, but right now you realize that we have 172.168.248 as our IP address. So clearly our DHCP server is up and running. That means any computer I add to the network henceforth would automatically respond to our DHCP server. So in this scenario, I am adding another computer for you to see what happens. We expect it to be able to receive an IP address automatically from our router. I'm turning it on. Now at default, when you run, your computer is set to static. So we set it to DHCP. And now let's try and see what happens. IP config. Oops, our service is still running. So let's see. Sometimes it takes some few seconds to come up. Config/release. Then we say IP config/renew. Oops. Wondering why it's taking some time to come, but it should respond very soon. Yes, it is. It has found a gateway, but that's not resolved the IP address yet. So now it's finally up and running. I'm sure some services on the PC were still starting. So now we have 172.168.247 assigned to this particular system. So basically we have succeeded in making this particular router a DHCP server, or this device a DHCP server that distributes IP addresses to the computers dynamically. So we could also display, for instance, the pool name. So we could say display IP pool, maybe LAN 1. It's telling me there are too many parameters. So we say IP pool name LAN 1. And what happens? It gives us a complete details of what our DHCP server. So the pool name is LAN 1, our DNS server 0, DNS server 1, that is the primary and the secondary DNS. There is the gateway, and now it gives us the start and end of our IP addresses, and it's telling us that in total we have 253 IPs because it's a class C. We have the broadcast IP, of course, which took off the first IP off. So now instead of it being 254 IPs, we have 253. And now we have 8 IPs used because we have approximately 8 PCs here. That means 8 IPs have been released to these particular computers, which you can check from time to time. Thank you for the time with me, and then I expect you in my next videos, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you later.